Alright everyone, first we start off today talking about Rondesantis. He's shaking up his campaign yet again. This is now the third or maybe fourth time? I'm not exactly sure. It's sort of like waiting for the next Biden fall and you lose track of how many times he's taken a tumble and almost hit his head on the pavement, the only saving grace being he appears to know how to roll onto his elbows. Of course, if he falls down the stairs from Air Force One, that might be more of a problem, so I'm sure that, literally people hold their breath when they're watching him come down a ramp. Rondesantis has fired his campaign manager, Generra Peck, and gotten a new one. Now, she's still with the campaign, but she's no longer going to be the one managing the campaign. And then you have his surrogates and staff going on TV and making a new quip, actually, which is, "Let Ron be Ron." Oh, that's an interesting slogan. It's a very powerful one. It's just like "Make America Great Again" or "Morning in America Again" or something like that. It's literally all about the candidate himself and is completely vacuous. Now, Ron DeSantis is in a death spiral. Right now he's swirling around the toilet, and the risk for him, because his campaign is entirely predicated on hoping that Donald Trump is imprisoned, banned from running by numerous states, therefore really can't win a general, even though in a write-in campaign he'd be the most formidable third-party/independent candidate in U.S. history, actually, or at least since Teddy Roosevelt, I suppose. Anyway, that's his entire purpose. He's like, well, Trump is old and under indictment. He might get to go to prison. He might die because he's an older dude. And so it's a Hail Mary campaign. His risk, therefore, is not any real shakeup in the campaign because he's been running consistently in second place. The risk is that he goes downward enough in that spiral so that he loses support very quickly. What can happen is that because a lot of the people that are backing DeSantis are predicating that on he's the only one who can win. He's Trump's policies without Trump, and we like him. Okay. The problem is that if viability is the main goal, because he's younger, they consider him well-spoken. Sometimes, I would agree with that. They consider him Trump with less baggage, although I'm going to tell you, somebody with his policies will do poorly among independent voters. Some independents just support him because they don't like it's the Kasich effect. They don't like the Democratic Party, which has a standard bearer, which is Joe Biden. They hate him, and they're not necessarily taken in by Trump, but they like the policies overall, but because they don't know what those policies are. There are people that don't know who DeSantis is. That's not the case for Trump. It's not the case for Biden, incumbent and former incumbent. What happens is you hit the doomsday point. We don't know exactly when he hits it, or if, to be honest, he does, at which you've got less support. Another candidate is close enough to you that it's no longer assured that you even have that viability, and then it all collapses very quickly. DeSantis is probably not far from that because he keeps having to reshuffle his campaign. He's hemorrhaged money, partially because of Generra Peck's poor decision-making and hiring, so he burned through a bunch of money hiring people he didn't need, so he had to streamline the campaign, but at the same time, now the investment class, which has been backing DeSantis to a huge degree, if they don't back Biden, they generally back DeSantis. Trump is running on the exhaust fumes of grassroots donations at this point, might have to sell one of his properties off and loan to his own campaign because of his mounting legal woes. With DeSantis, even after streamlining the campaign, it's rather top-down. It's more like a Pence campaign. And he's got several individuals that are huddled up behind him almost at the point of viability. Vivek Ramaswamy is the big one. Vivek Ramaswamy, assuming that he can avoid losing that bump that he got from Iowa, and assuming that he does well at the GOP debate, could supplant DeSantis. If DeSantis falls to third, it's over for him. There's no possibility that he can maintain the campaign. He might very well drop out before Super Tuesday. By the way, if that happens, his political career is done. He becomes Jeb 2.0 effectively. He's not going to run for governor again because I believe legally he can't in the state of Florida after a second term, and he'll have lost his own home state to Trump. Now, Trump may very well in the end get knocked out by constant indictment and conviction and end up under house arrest or something like that. I think that 24 is going to be the god-awfully messiest campaign of all U.S. history. It'll be worse than the Reconstruction period because we don't know what is going to happen. We don't know that that Biden even survives to the election. He's in his 80s. Trump is in his late 70s. He could croak, so you could end up with a last-minute shakeup in the lineup when the ballots are already printed. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. And there are enough nut jobs out there that are convinced that Trump is Hitler or that Biden is Joseph Stalin, so somebody might try to go Lee Harvey Oswald. This is a distinct possibility. That right now you've got a huge amount of social alienation. You've got a lot of stress on a lot of people, and they blame various third parties for that stress, deservedly or undeservedly. One of them might snap at some point. It's not they could kill both of them. You could end up with both of them getting knocked off. Well, what the fuck happens then? Who even is running? Cornel West 24, I guess, becomes a feasible possibility. That's the other thing. You've got a fairly strong third-party bracket, too. You're not just going to have the Libertarians. You've got Cornel West of the Greens. He's got more name recognition than any former Green Party candidate. He's siphoning a few points from Biden. We're already seeing that in polling. And he will be on the ballot in numerous states. That's a fucking problem for Biden. The no-labelers, appealing to a broad coalition of independent voters, are more likely to run a liberal than a conservative. That becomes a big problem. Trump might not be able to campaign at all. Even if he doesn't get convicted of anything before Election Day, he's still under 4 different indictments, probably a 5th soon, and he has to go to fucking court constantly, while spending millions and millions of dollars on a legal defense, I would add. That saps his campaign. It does weaken him, but at the same time, it raises his internal polling. He was at risk for Desantis actually being viable there in the early states until he got indicted. All of a sudden, he gained 10 points broadly nationwide. The recent polling is effectively unchanged. He remains 20 to 30 points ahead in all the starting states. He's way out in front in Arizona as well for Super Tuesday, of course. He's out in front in Florida, which hammers Rondesantis and nixes his career entirely if that occurs. If Trump takes Florida by even a point, Rondesantis will never fucking run for office again. He'll be humiliated. In fact, at this point, if I were Rondesantis, I would literally just hang up the towel and say, okay, you know what? It's clear that it's not going to happen. I may not agree with the GOP lay that Trump is the best choice, but I'm going to get behind the man. I'll endorse Trump. Or he can just sit it out and be a scumbag and say, I'm not going to endorse anyone. I endorse Asa Hutchinson or some other lost cause campaign. So, yeah. Spectacular fail by the Ron DeSantis campaign there. He shot out of the gate. He should have announced earlier, actually. And he definitely should have reacted differently to Indictment Gate when that began. It's okay to attack your opponent. Trump insulted him first. There's nothing wrong with DeSantis responding in kind. But you have to choose when and how. You have to show tact. What Ron DeSantis has shown me, more than anything else so far in the last few months, it's a lack of strategy. It's a lack of forethought and planning. If you go into a general election against a well-oiled uniparty machine and you aren't just a sellout wolf in sheep's clothing, which some people suggest DeSantis is, and it's possible that's true, if you genuinely are MAGA minus Trump's baggage and you get nominated, you will lose. Ron DeSantis, in my opinion, would have maybe a 10% chance at most of beating Joe Biden, assuming there's no honk-honk going on in the election. With Trump, I believe it's a 50-50 at this point. I don't know what the hell all these indictments are going to lead to. I don't know how much they're going to stack more charges. I don't know that he'll even be alive because he's a fucking 77-year-old man. The same is true of Joe Biden. There are like 7 or 8 different major possibilities for how this race could become ultra messy. Some are more likely than others, but altogether, there's about a 99% chance something insane happens before the general election even begins. We're just not sure which insanity we're going to have. Is it more schizophrenic or more narcissistic personality disorder? Which particular trouble is going to afflict us? It's going to be one for the record books. It's definitely already more interesting than 2016. That's about all. Peace out.